Hi, my name is Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Channel, and today I want to talk about a problem that a lot of small communities have, and maybe big ones as well. But that is the problem we have when people who have really been active within the community, who've really taken care of the community, pass on, and then they just leave a hole that sometimes is very difficult to fill. Well, I want to talk about two such men today, and they're both from the community that I've lived in for nearly 30 years now in Happy, Texas. One of them's name is Joe Bill Dempsey. Joe Bill was born, I think, in Perryton, Texas, but he moved to Happy. His family did shortly after that, and he graduated from Happy High School. And just a little bit before that, a man by the name of Jackie Pyle was born in Crest, Texas. And their family also moved to Happy, and he also graduated from high school in Happy, Texas. And so both of them, though they weren't born here, were pretty much lifelong citizens of Happy. And they were certainly lifelong fixtures. Joe Bill was in law enforcement nearly all of his life, from the time he and his wife Glenda got married, and he went to the police academy, and then he just went from different jobs. In law enforcement, I believe he worked for the Amarillo Police Department for a while. I know he worked for Child Protective Services for a while, a very difficult job. And he also, I believe, was the chief of police at West Texas A&M University for a while. And it was there that I met him. I had actually, shortly after I moved here, had locked my keys in the car at the gym, one of the gymnasiums at WT, and we knew somebody knew Joe Bill, and so they called him, and he came to make sure that we were taken care of. So anyway, from the very first moment I met Joe Bill, he was always involved in helping. Whether it was helping me or helping other people, he was just a really decent man and a very humble man. He was about 6'3" tall, had a voice that sounded like it came from the depths of the ocean, very deep, and but a quick smile, very friendly man. And yet in law enforcement, there were times where he didn't have that smile, and people recognized the fact that he was very serious, very quick. And so Joe Bill was very effective as a law enforcement officer. He finally got to the point where he retired, and he was living in Happy already, but he came and started being the volunteer chief police for Happy, Texas, or chief of police in Happy, Texas. And I really got to know him even more during that time. He worshiped at the same church that I preached at, and so I knew him from that, but everybody knew Joe Bill. And he was unique, I believe, as far as law enforcement. Most people who are involved in law enforcement are very good and very dedicated people. And Joe Bill was that to the nth degree. He really did love people. I asked him one time if he had ever given a ticket in Happy, because one of his jobs was to pull people over, especially during the lunch hour at high school, and if they were breaking the law, which they did quite often, breaking the traffic laws on Main Street, and he would stop them and he would lecture them, and with that big old deep voice of his, plus the fact that nearly every one of them knew him, it really helped. And he said he never wrote a ticket the whole time. Out of the hundreds of stops he had in Happy, he never wrote a single ticket. He felt like their lives were difficult enough, and especially he could relate to the high school kids and the sometimes irresponsibility that comes along with that. And so he helped them to become responsible. And usually all it took was a word from him, just pulling over and saying, slow it down. And there would nearly always be a, yes, sir, I'll do that. But if there was ever any problem, Joe Bill would then go to phase 2, where he'd say, am I going to have to talk to your daddy? And that did the trick for the rest of them. And so, like I say, he was not just a good law enforcement agent, but he was something of a psychologist as well. I don't know how many times I had to call him through the years for some situation or another that was going on. But I do know that whenever I called him, he was always just quick to get there. There was one night I was working late at the church building, and it was probably 11, 12 o'clock at night, and pouring down rain, and I heard the front doors open. So I went to the front, and there was this man there just soaking wet, and it just didn't quite look right. Obviously, a little bit different to show up in that late at night in a rainstorm. But the first question I asked him was, "How did you get here?" And he said, I was riding my bike. And I asked him where he'd been riding it from. Well, it was some 20 miles up the road, and he had another 15 to go when he had to pull over. And I asked him what was so important. Well, he said he had to get down to a town south of us and do something there, and he wondered if he could have a ride. Well, I have a little bit of hesitation giving people rides at midnight in a blinding rainstorm, but I didn't want to just leave them high and dry, so to speak, and so I called Joe Bill, and Joe Bill was there in just a few minutes, and I told him, I can get you a ride, but it'll be with our police chief. Do you mind that? And he said, "Oh no, that'll be fine." Well, Joe Bill got there, and he sized him up real quick, and he said, "Yes, I'll give you a ride to where you're going, but," he said, "I have to give you a ride in an official police vehicle, so do you mind if I just frisk you real quick?" And the guy said, "No," and so Joe Bill frisked him, and in the back of his waistband, he had a knife that had to be, the blade at least 6 inches long, and it was just a big knife with the handle and everything. And so anyway, Joe Bill eventually went ahead and gave him the ride to the town he was seeking, but not to the same place he was hoping to go to. But again, he handled it very well. There was no threat of violence. There was no scene. It was just very simply handled, and he was able to handcuff the man and take him away. Well, I don't know how many times Joe Bill handled situations like that nobody really knew that he was involved with it. But I do remember one time, Happy doesn't have a lot of homeless people, and the reason that we don't is it's very difficult for a homeless person to survive in Happy, but somebody thought that they would try it out, and so they set up a tent in Happy, and Joe Bill heard about it, of course, and so he went down just very friendly and stood outside the tent and called the gentleman, and he said, I just wanted to let you know you're more than welcome to spend the night here tonight, though we do have laws against this. You can go ahead and do that, but he said, I'd suggest you move along pretty quickly in the morning, and I'd also suggest that you not go outside your tent tonight. And then he looked at him very meaningfully with that big, deep voice he has, said, this is for your protection, not the town's protection. And the man got the idea. And it wasn't that Joe Bill was threatening him. He pointed out that just about everybody in Happy had a gun and wouldn't hesitate to use it if they felt like their family was threatened. And so the man went on to greener pastures, so to speak. And again, it was handled very kindly, very politely, in a very friendly manner, but it was handled. And Joe Bill handled situations like that because he really and truly loved the people in Happy. Not only did he have children here, but he also had grandchildren here, and he was very protective of them, and he was very protective of our children and our grandchildren as well as every little old lady and every other citizen in town. He just had a heart of gold. And so when he dealt with people, that came out. And when the situation was serious, he could get serious very quickly, but he did so with as least amount of threat and least amount of force that could possibly be used. He passed away about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, this January, as a matter of fact, and Happy's not been able to replace him since. We certainly have a chief of police, and he's a good guy, and he does his job very well. But Joe Bill was just different. He had experience. He knew everybody in town. He knew who belonged here and who didn't. He knew when somebody was really needing help who didn't belong here, and he helped them. But he also knew people that were just kind of up to trouble, and he would take care of that situation as well. And again, he's left a huge hole in Happy since he's been gone, not just from a law enforcement presence, but from the presence of a friend, a dear friend, somebody that was very well loved. Well, the other man I wanted to talk to you today is a very similar man. His name is Jackie Pyle. And Jackie passed away, I guess, back in October of 2017, so he's been gone for a little over 6 years now. But Jackie, again, was born in Crest, but moved to Happy and graduated from Happy High School. And he went to the Army, served in Vietnam, and then when he came home, he went to work in one of the gas stations here. We had several at that time. And as the years went by, he became partners in one of the gas stations. And again, the years kept going by, and the gas station started closing because in Happy, Texas, there's not a lot of traffic coming through, especially since the interstate passed us by. And so before you knew it, the only station left in town was Jackie's, and he kept it open. Jackie was a rare individual. He was very soft-spoken. He very rarely spoke more than 4 or 5 words at one time. But usually when he said something, it was worth listening to. And he was very helpful. He was kind of our first line of defense in Happy, though he was not law enforcement. He knew everybody in Happy. He'd been here most of his life, and he knew who belonged and who didn't belong. He also, like Joe Bilk, had recognized people who were coming through who truly needed help because they were in trouble, but he also recognized the people that were just trouble. And so he helped who he could. And then he would call the churches with people that really did need help that was a little bit more than what he was able to handle at the time. And he also just kind of looked out for people. After he passed away, I don't know how many people commented that when they were needing something, Jackie was there to help. He might carry them for a while with their gas bill, or he might help them with their rent. There was even one little boy about 7 years old who he heard about, who had been diagnosed with leukemia. And so the little boy had to be pretty much housebound after that. And so Jackie kind of asked around, and he found out what a 7-year-old boy could really use. And so Jackie bought him an iPad so that this little boy, Caleb, would have something to keep him occupied with. I doubt if Jackie had ever even heard the phrase iPad before, and he may not have even known what it was after he bought one for this little boy, but he sure knew little boys. And he had a heart that just ached for people when they were going through difficult times. Well, after Jackie passed away, the state of Texas shut the station down. If a gas station doesn't have continuous use, you have to go back through all sorts of hoops to get the license to be open and sell gas. And the gentleman that Jackie left the station to certainly did his best, and eventually was able to get a couple of pumps up and going so people could get gasoline and diesel here in town. But it took an awful lot of effort to do that. And I think one of the things that he found, the one that took over the station for a bit, and that everybody in town found out, was that Jackie really pretty much ran that station at a loss. Jackie lived a very simple lifestyle. He just lived in a trailer home. He had a couple of others that he rented out for extra income. But he didn't need a lot. He loved to fish, and so he'd go fishing. And so Jackie didn't spend a lot of money. But what he did do was just about every teenage boy that needed a job and came to him and asked him if he had a job, he would figure out some way to give him a job, a paying job, even if he really didn't need him at that time. When people came through Happy, as I mentioned before, he could pretty well read them, and he did kind of a triage for us as far as helping those who really needed help and directing them to the help they needed, or getting them to move along if they really shouldn't didn't have any business being there doing what they were doing. And on very rare occasions, Jackie had to call law enforcement to get them to take care of the situation. But usually Jackie, in his quiet way and in his wisdom, could persuade people that they just needed to move on, that there really wasn't anything unhappy for them. Well, Jackie also would watch after the town at night. He would get on his little golf cart after he bought a golf cart, or ride around in his pickups, and he would shoot skunks. And if he ran into any of the two-legged variety of skunk, he would usually find out what they were up to, and they knew he was there. And so Jackie, like Joe Bill, was very good at protecting Happy. And again, I don't think there was a mean bone in Jackie's body, but he was very much someone who felt pressed to be a watchman over the town and to keep the town safe and then taken care of. If one of our ladies in town had a flat tire, he would send some of his boys out to get that tire fixed, and then they would get the car into the shop to get it fixed right. Or if somebody's battery was dead, he would go out and jump it for them. He was just very conscientious and very concerned about people. And so the thing that Jackie and the thing that Joe Bill had in common, though their careers were very different, was that they were very much watchmen in Happy, but they were also shepherds in the idea that they would take care of people much like a shepherd takes care of its flock. Neither one of them liked to be out front. Neither one of them liked to be a leader, and so they certainly weren't a shepherd from that perspective. But as far as the gentleness and the compassion for people and the desire to make sure that they were taken care of and protected and safe was so important to them. Well, as I mentioned, Jackie's been gone for about 6 years now, a little over, and Joe Bill a little over 2. And while we've had numerous men and women who have done a great job in stepping up, trying to fill the gap, trying to fill the hole that they've left, they're finding that it's very difficult for just one person to do that because they were so good at what they did and they loved people so much that they were willing to go the extra mile, and then the extra mile again, and then the extra mile again. And my question to those of you in similar circumstances, whether you're from Happy, Texas, or a community somewhere else that's been through similar situations, is this: who will replace them as watchmen? It's a difficult task to have somebody who can take command of a situation yet do so gently. It's a very difficult thing for somebody to know when force is needed and when force is not needed, when gentleness is needed, and when it will just encourage the bad. And these two, through their years of experience, just had that to a degree that I've seen in just very few men. And again, I wonder who will replace these watchmen. Well, from a Christian perspective, all of us have that duty, don't we? Ezekiel chapter 3 and Ezekiel 33 both have the same theme. God is talking to the prophet Ezekiel, and he tells him, I'm making you a watchman, and so you need to look after these people. And when you see an enemy coming, you need to sound the alarm. And if you don't sound the alarm, while people will die, I'm going to hold you accountable for it. But if you do sound the alarm and they don't pay any attention, well, they'll still die, but I won't hold you accountable. You did your job. And then he points out the whole purpose behind that. But if you do see trouble coming and you warn the people and they take heed and they change and they get prepared, then they will have saved their lives and you will have saved yourself. And then God gave Ezekiel a message that he was to bring to the Israelites, to the people of Judah, to tell them of the enemy that was coming and to tell them they needed to repent, because if they didn't, bad things were going to happen. And Ezekiel took his position of watchman very seriously, because Ezekiel not only was effective at looking out for people, but he also loved people, and he wanted them to heed the call. In the 127th Psalm, this psalm is attributed to Solomon, and it says this: "Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain." This is something for all of us to remember as we do our part with whatever circle of influence we have in acting as a watchman and as acting as a shepherd as best we can. We want to make sure that first and foremost we recognize that God's in charge and seek His help and seek to do things His way. Because unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchmen stand guard in vain. I believe one of the reasons that Jackie Pyle and Joe Bill Dempsey did so well was not only did they watch over the town, not only did they love the people who they were watching over, but they also loved God, and they sought out His help. And because of that, they were very effective in what they did. And so maybe this is part of the answer to the question, who will replace the watchman? It's got to be somebody who loves God and who loves people, and who is concerned enough about others to where he's willing to make a sacrifice, or she is willing to make a sacrifice to keep watch and to stand guard, and when threats appear, to handle them in the right way. That's a rare combination for any person. Joe Bill and Jackie handled it about as well as anybody I've ever seen. But they're gone now, and now it's our turn. And so maybe the answer to the question, who will replace the watchman, it's us. The question is, will we be up to the task? Well, I appreciate you're tuning in today. I hope that this message is one that's a message of encouragement. These two men certainly were an encouragement to hundreds, if not thousands of people, certainly thousands throughout their lifetime. And we can too, if we'll just do our part, love people enough to keep watch over them without sticking our nose into their business where it doesn't belong, and also to do our best to love God and to be motivated by our love for God and our fellow men to really do our best to take care of our fellow man, including watching out for them to make sure nothing ever bad happens to them. Appreciate your tuning in. We'll see you next time.